Without further ado, we have 2 secrets to get more customers for your local service business. What I learned from auditing over 200 companies. So I have a question for you. Are you tired of wasting money on marketing? I know I was, and I know a lot of people are. There's a lot of marketers out there that frankly don't know what they're doing. And I know because I was once one of them. And I think the reason that is because there's not much of a barrier to entry for becoming a marketer. If you have a computer and you're willing to take a 4-hour Udemy course on building a website, you can call yourself a marketer and you can start selling marketing services. But the thing is most of the people calling themselves marketers out there just they don't really know how to get results because they've never really got results for themselves or for anybody else. And so they live in this limbo land of doing things and not really knowing, what the results are of those actions. And when you talk to them, oftentimes they'll make marketing sound really complicated and scary and like something that they should understand that you shouldn't understand, but that's really not true. The more that I learn about it, the more simple it becomes. And I believe that marketing and lead generation for service businesses is really simple. It's just a matter of executing it properly. And if you read online, you watch YouTube videos, it will seem like there's a bazillion options for you when it comes to marketing and getting customers online, but there's really only a handful of things that you can do that are going to yield real results. And today I'm going to share with you 2 things that you can focus on now that will get you 80% of the results that there are to be had. So for those of you who watch this now or later who don't know my story, I started out working as a laborer in my father's remodeling company as a teenager. And I spent about 12 years working my way up through the construction trade, working for different remodeling companies around the West Coast. And I worked my way up through all the ranks, eventually becoming a business owner myself. And when I was a new business owner, I was really good at building stuff, but I had no clue about marketing and business and all of that. And so, like many of you, I turned to the internet to learn more, and I read books, I bought courses, I watched thousands of YouTube videos, and I felt like I had real information overload. And I felt like after a long time of consuming information, I felt like a lot of it wasn't really helping me get anywhere. So I was dead set on this mission to figure out how to acquire customers for my own remodeling company. And this mission eventually led me to starting my second business, Adapt Digital Solutions. And my thinking back then was I really wanted to learn about business, but the only like playground I had was my own, and we weren't doing a whole lot. So I thought if I can get halfway decent at marketing and work with other companies, then I could see behind the scenes of what they're doing and see what works and what doesn't, and be able to learn a lot more about business. And my thesis was correct. Working with people, seeing behind the scenes of their businesses has given me enough insights to grow my companies to becoming successful and also to help hundreds of other companies do the same. So that was about 7 years ago when I started that company. And it took me about 5 years of trial and error working with hundreds of other businesses around the country before I really started feeling like I had figured it out. And that's quite something to go 5 years and spend a lot of that time like not totally sure if you're good at what you're doing or you're not. And around the 5-year mark is when I started doing these consultations. And so I had learned enough, I had enough experience that it was easy for me to go in and look and see what another company was doing and immediately like hone in on what was working well, what wasn't, and what they could do to grow their business, solve whatever problems they're dealing with. And so over the last couple of years, I've done up to 8 consults a week, all different types of construction companies, local service businesses around the country. And the purpose of these hour-long calls is to assess a person's business situation and figure out what to do. Most of the time, people come to me looking for help on how to get more customers, how to make more money. And what I do is I look at their situation. If they have anything going on, I'll talk to them and figure out, what's working and what isn't. and then give them a plan on what they can do to get more customers and make more money. At the end of the day, like that's what we're in business for. One of the core reasons is we want to make more money. And so if that's what you want to do, then you're in the right place. Doing so many of these calls really has hammered home a couple principles that make any business successful. It doesn't even matter what kind it is. And those principles that I'm going to share with you today, they apply to local service companies and somewhat to any kind of business there is out there. And just so you have a little bit of context, I want to explain how these consultations work. So people come to me, a lot of them find me on YouTube, or they'll find me on my website or some other way, referrals, and they'll pay me $250 to sit down with them for an hour and figure out what to do. And I always offer a money back guarantee, meaning if someone goes through this process and they decide that it wasn't worth it, I'll just give them their money back, no questions asked. I've never had that happen, but I do that because that sets me apart from other marketers out there who, you know, are willing to take money for nothing. I put my money where my mouth is, and I know it will be valuable. And it's important for people to invest in themselves. So they pay that fee, they fill out an online worksheet, tell me all about their business. The information they share allows me to do my own homework and figure out kind of what I would do if I were them before I talk to them. That way we can make our conversation as valuable as possible. Once they fill out the online calendar or the online worksheet, they go to an online calendar and choose a time and a day to do the consultation call. When that day comes, we get on the call, and I do everything I can to help them gain clarity on their situation and have a concrete step-by-step plan of action on what to do next. And most of the time, I'm able to give people a plan that will take them through the next couple years, because there's only like so many things you can do when it comes to online marketing and customer acquisition for service companies that everybody ends up doing the same thing. It's a matter of execution and measuring the results. I also offer in-person coaching starting at $5,000 per day for those who want me to fly out to their location and help them figure out problems on the go. So if you want me to come out and work with you around the clock to solve some pretty big problems, that's an option as well. So those are the calls that I've been doing. I've done around 200 now, and it's led me to some conclusions. And I've reached these conclusions because, you know, I have these conversations multiple times a week, and I find myself repeating myself over and over again. And so that's what gave me the idea to even make this presentation. It's like, if I know I'm going to give everybody the same advice, then I might as well just put it out there and make it free and available for anybody who can find it and is willing to listen to it. So here's one of the things is half of marketing is simply tracking results. You know, everybody thinks about websites and all that. And when I start these conversations, people always want to jump into like, oh, let's talk about SEO and my website and Google ads and all this. And I just stop them. I'm like, hold on a second. Let me ask you some questions about the numbers. And most of the time, I'd say at least 9 out of 10 times, when I ask people how many leads they get on average per month, or how many customers they had last year, or what their average profit is per customer, they just start guessing. And very, very few people actually know the answers to these questions. And almost as few actually have tracked this stuff and know how to find those answers. So that's really like, if you're not measuring results, you could do all the marketing in the world, but you're not going to make very much progress, and you're just going to be sitting around wondering what to do. So measuring results is half the battle, and you can start doing it right now. And I'll explain more about how to do it here in a second, but it's important because what works for a remodeling company in like Sacramento might not work for a remodeling company in Collins, Missouri. Like, they're very different places, different markets, and you have different competitors. And so how well the identical marketing strategy works for each of those companies could be drastically different. And the only way to know how well something's working is to measure the results. And so if you want to make progress in your marketing, you have to measure the results. And it's kind of strange to me as someone who's really solidified this in my mind, but there's a lot of marketers out there that don't really want to know this. And I think it's because they don't want to bring the results to light because they will risk losing their paycheck, you know. And I know that people think this because I used to think this when I was a beginner marketer. Like I was afraid of finding out what the results were because I was afraid of losing a client. And that kind of stuff used to keep me up at night because I hate the idea of somebody paying me for services that aren't either working well for them or aren't the best option. And it wasn't until I figured out how to track results in my own businesses and then teach my clients how to do it that they were able to give me the feedback to let me know what I was doing was working. And that's when things really took off for me and my clients, is once we figured out how to really track things. And hopefully it sounds like common sense to you, but even if it does, I bet you $100 you're still not doing it. So I would ask you, why are you not doing it? But the fact is, if you track the data carefully, it'll tell you exactly what you should do. So how do you measure the results of marketing? There's really two steps to doing this. First step is tracking the data. The second step is analyzing the data. And in the beginning, like, don't even worry about analyzing, just worry about tracking. And there's one thing you really need to track when it comes to your marketing, and that is lead source. And so a lead source, I'm going to go over the definition of a lead source just so we can make sure that we're talking about the same thing. What is a lead? To me, a lead is anybody that comes into the business from any marketing source, like for anything. So if somebody calls you and asks for a quote, that's a lead. If somebody fills out a contact form on your website and they're looking for a job, that gets logged as a lead. If someone clicks on an ad and calls about your service, that's a lead. And if someone was referred to you by another customer, that's a lead. Anybody who comes in to your ecosystem, to your field of vision, whatever you want to call it, whether they're qualified or not, they get listed as a lead. And I want to highlight that, like whether they're qualified or not, because I ask multiple people every week, how many leads do you get? And it's super common for me to get an answer like, oh, I get 5 leads a month. And then when I actually look at all their leads and where they're coming from, they're getting like 15 a month. And then they're like, oh, well, we only count the good leads. And it's important to just count what's there, whether they're qualified or not, whether it's a lead for work or if it's someone looking for a job. If they came through your website, they go on the list. And that's because maybe at the end of the year, you'll find that you have 5 different places, 5 different lead sources, 5 places where leads come from. And you might ask yourself, well, which one of these lead sources produce the least amount of junk leads? And if you're not tracking this stuff, then you won't be able to answer that question. So you just track it as it is. A lead is anyone that comes in through any of these marketing channels, good, bad, even if it's spam, I want to know about it. The second half of lead source is the source. So this is simply where, like, I would say the marketing channel where the lead comes from. So if someone clicks the call button on your Google business listing on Google Maps, that's the source, your Google business listing. If someone finds your website on Google and fills out the contact form, the source was Google. If they click the call button on your Google ad because you're advertising, then the source is Google Ads. If someone was referred to you by another customer, then the source was a referral. And if you get a lot of referrals, you might even track how many referrals you get from each customer, because you might find that 10% of your customers give you 90% of your referrals, and you might decide that you want to reward those customers or do something to keep that happening. As long as you measure this stuff as it happens, you'll be able to come back later and analyze the data and figure out what to do with it. But in the beginning, just log it somewhere. Every single lead that comes in gets tracked. Every single one needs a lead source. Even if you can just get 9 out of 10 of these things accurately logged, you will be miles ahead of your competition, because hardly anybody does this. And so everyone's flying blind. It's kind of crazy. So that's the first secret. And it's not that big of a secret. Track every single lead that comes in and track where it comes from. If you have a log of all of your leads, then later on, let's say at the end of the year, you'll be able to go through your entire customer list. And most of us should have pretty easy access to a customer list because the IRS makes us track our income and pay taxes every year. So you should have a pretty good idea of how much money you made last year. If you're not tracking that stuff, then you probably have bigger problems than customer acquisition. You should probably think about looking into paying taxes and don't get yourself in a hole. But you should be able to look back to last year or whatever timeline and see how many customers you had and how much money you made. You'll be able to figure out if you tracked where those leads came from in the first place, you'll be able to see where those customers came from, and you'll be able to see where your money came from. And that's really the key. If you're in business for a year and you can look back and see exactly where your money came from, then you can go after more of it. If you're not thinking about this stuff or tracking it, then you're kind of just hoping that you get lucky and things just work out. Don't rely on luck. This stuff's not too hard. You just track the leads as they come in, and you can go back later and figure this stuff out. So I hear it all the time, like, I'm not good with numbers, so I'm not going to be able to do this, or I don't have time to track this stuff. Or maybe the most common thing I hear is, I'm not a techie person and this sounds kind of technical, so I'm probably not going to be able to do this. Like, all of that stuff's nonsense. Like, if you're somewhat okay with money and like dealing with money, tracking your numbers will be pretty easy. If you think you don't have time to do this, I would argue that you don't have time not to do this, because if you're not doing this, you're likely wasting a lot of time and money. And this sounds too technical for me. There's some pretty simple ways to do it, and I'll get to those in a second. Here they are right here. Like, I like to use spreadsheets. I use Google Sheets because it's free and it's easy to use. I have a spreadsheet where I just put every lead, the date they came in, where they came from, their name, their number, all that kind of stuff. And I can go back anytime and see how many leads I got in June, which ones turned into sales, all that. It's just in a spreadsheet. Some people like to use notebooks. My dad's been using those red yearly journals for like 30 years. That's what he does. It takes him a little longer to go back and find out where all of his customers came from, but it's logged somewhere, so he does have the option to go back. You can use a CRM. If you don't know what a CRM is, don't worry about it. You might be able to use your invoicing software like QuickBooks. There might be a spot in there where you can note where the customer came from. But if you're not putting all your leads in there, then you're not going to be able to track the lead source. So make sure you're tracking the lead source somewhere. Wherever you do it, don't rely on your brain and your memory. You will not remember this stuff. Trust me, I tried that. It doesn't work. I can't remember anything. I have to write everything down. And once it's written down, I can forget about it and it's there. So track your lead source every single time. Every time you talk to someone, every time you get an email, whatever it is, they go on a list, track the source. Don't be one of those people that I talk to who has no idea how many leads they get. Okay, so you're tracking leads. I've convinced you that that's a good idea. So now we can get to where everybody wants to start the conversation, and that's where, how do we get customers? How do we get found? How do we get leads? All that kind of stuff. And secret number 2 is that you need to go where the action is. And these days, about 90% of online searches are done on Google. For people looking for a contractor or a service business to work with, if they don't have like a referral or anything, they're going to Google. And you know this is true when I say it, because that's what you do. You want to find a restaurant, you want to find a pool, you want to find a pool cleaner, whatever it is, you go to Google, you type it in, Google shows you exactly what you're looking for. And in order to show you a little bit more about Google, I need to change my screen. Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Again, if you guys have questions, post them up in the chat. If anything I said wasn't clear, let me know so I can dive back into it. All right, so the best way to get a feel for what's going on Google, or the first step of figuring out how you can get your company to show up on Google is by going to Google and doing a search as if you're one of your customers and taking a look to see what Google shows you. This is what I do every single time. And okay, looks like it's working. So anytime, let's say that I'm talking to a plumber in Spokane, Washington, and they want to know what their market's like. They want to know what they can do or what they have to do. I just go to Google and I type in plumber Spokane and I look and see what I see, what Google shows me. So these days there's 4 sections of Google. Google gives you 4 ways to show up on their search engine. At the top for local service businesses, we have what's called local service ads. I've done a couple YouTube videos on these, so if you want to go find more information later, you can check those out. But this is basically Google saw the Home Advisors and the Angie's List and the Thumbtacks of the world taking people from Google and reselling their contact information to people like you as leads. And so Google decided, well, why don't we just skip the middleman and sell leads directly? So you can sign up with Google and they'll show your business up here at the top of the screen. And anytime somebody clicks on it and calls you, you'll pay Google for that call. Or if they hit the book button, whatever. If they contact you, you're paying for that contact. That's section 1. Section 2 is Google Ads. This used to be called Google AdWords, and this is Google's pay-per-click advertising. So while local service ads up at the top is pay-per-call, on Google Ads, they're paying anytime someone clicks on their ad. So if I click on this, I'll go to their website, and they'll pay Google probably like $20. And for every 5 to 10 people that click on that ad, one of them will either call or fill out a contact form and become a lead for them. And so they pay for clicks. Every 10 or so clicks, they get a lead. And that's how Google Ads works. That's section 2. Section 3 is Google Maps. So Google Maps is Google's search engine for local businesses. And so the 3 companies that are showing up here they're not paying Google directly to show up here. Google's showing them because Google believes that they are the best search results. They're the best 3 companies to show for this given search. And if I click on more businesses, Google's going to show me tons of plumbers. And that means that Google decided that those 3 plumbers on the front page were a better option than all these other plumbers. So these companies probably invested in their online presence and did whatever they had to do to get Google to trust them and be willing to show them. And then once they got here, now they're competing on the number of reviews and the rating they have. So let's say that my company was Action Drain and Plumbing. It's not. I don't know these people at all, but let's just say that there's my company, and I'm showing up next to Gold Seal and Shaw Plumbing. These guys are killing me on reviews. Action Drain has 323, Gold Seal has over 3,000, and Shaw Plumbing has almost 1,000. So in this case, all 3 of these have hundreds. So the average consumer is going to pretty much trust all 3 of these. But there's a lot of situations where one company might have 10 reviews and the other companies have hundreds. And that one with 10 is just not going to be chosen nearly as often as the companies with hundreds. So it's important to note that when it comes to Google Maps, showing up here as one of these top 3 is half the battle. The other half is having more reviews and a better rating than your competitors. So that's Google Maps. That's the 3rd section. And then the 4th section of Google is what we call organic search. So this is what Google looked like 20 years ago before Google Ads and Google Maps and all that was a thing. It was just a list of websites. And again, these websites are here organically, meaning they're not paying Google directly to be here. They're here because Google believes these are the best websites to show for this given search. So those are the 4 sections. We've got organic search at the bottom, Google Maps, Google Ads, and Google Local Service Ads, sometimes called Google Guaranteed. If you are playing this game perfectly, then you will be in all 4 places. It's possible for your company to show up on 4 places on the front page of Google, and that's the absolute best you can do. For most companies out there, like most of my clients, they don't need to show up in all four places. Oftentimes, showing up in one or two gets them all the leads they need, at least at this current stage. When we approach getting on Google, it's quite a large topic. I've got many videos on each one of these sections. I've got a whole free training course on my YouTube channel on how to get your company to show up in Google Maps. But the name of the game, as far as there's two ways to be here. You can pay to play. These top two sections, you pay Google directly, and they'll show you up here. And then everything below that is organic, meaning you have to work really hard to get Google to look at you as the best search result. In this market, as a plumber, that would be pretty difficult to do. But for most of the country, if you're outside of a major city, or if you're in like a medium or smaller town, then most likely your competition isn't that thick. And so you only have to be better than your competitors. If my company, Kyle Construction, I think we have 12 reviews or something like that. And we show up on Google Maps all the time. Like, we get so many leads, and it's just because our competitors, Google still thinks that we are the best search result, and so they show us all the time. And so you don't have to be the best in the world. You only have to be better than your competitors. So again, this is a big topic. Feel free to ask questions. Maybe we'll go more into depth on the next live call. But for now, that's all I'm going to talk about with Google. The important thing for you to know is that this is where you need to be. You can be on social media, you can be on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and all these places, but most of the action is on Google. And so if you're not already on Google and you're not already taking advantage of the fact that 80 to 90% of people searching for you are on Google, then there's no sense looking at that other stuff. Like, step one, get on here, get on Google Maps, start getting reviews. Once you have a Google Maps listing and you have reviews, that opens the door to run local service ads, because that's all they do is they take your Google listing and they pop it up here at the top and charge you for phone calls. And so if you have a Google listing for a plumbing company in Spokane and you have 3 reviews and you do local service ads, you probably won't get any calls because you have 3 reviews and these guys have thousands. So why would anybody choose you? So again, half the battle is showing up. The other half is getting people to choose you. And it's really common sense why people choose stuff online. Like, reviews is a huge factor. We all shop on Amazon these days. We all know we make our purchasing decisions based off of Amazon reviews, our restaurant decisions off reviews. Like, reviews is key. So it's just something you got to do. If you want to start a listing, you go to google.com/business and just fill out the form, jump through their hoops. You'll be able to figure it out. If not, just hit us up and we'll help you. All right, let me get back to my slides here. All right, so go where the action at. The action is on Google. Those are the 2 main things. And don't keep this stuff a secret. Spread the word, talk about it, track every single lead and where it comes from. If you don't do anything else with any of this information, if you just write down the name of every lead that comes in somewhere and where it came from, future you will be thanking yourself a year from now when you're able to look back and see where your money came from. It's super common for companies to spend thousands of dollars on Google ads, get tons of leads, and not make any money from those leads. And so if you're investing money, if you're investing time in this stuff, track the results so you know what's working and what doesn't. Like, 90% of business is just identifying what works and then doubling down on it. And so step 1, figure out what works. Step 2, double down on it. The second secret here today is be on Google. Come on, common sense. We all use Google for everything. That's why it's like now they're facing like an antitrust lawsuit right now because they're a monopoly. Google's where it's at for today. If that changes, I'll let you know. You do these 2 things, you'll be ahead of 90% of your competition. And that's a fact. I'm basing that off of the 200 consultations I've done and the thousands of contractors I've talked to. Most people have not figured this stuff out. I just gave you the keys to the kingdom. So do what you got to do, track that stuff, figure out how to get on Google. And I'm here to help. My biggest growth has always come from asking people to help me. I find people that are further along than I am, and I figure out how much money I have to pay them to get them to help me. And it's always worth it. You know, they're able to help me make progress so much faster than I can on my own. And so don't be afraid to invest in yourself and develop your understanding of how this stuff works. It's amazing what it can do for you when you see how another business is being successful. It makes everything seem a lot simpler and manageable for you. Because when you don't really know what you're doing, every problem seems like it's enormous. But when you see how simply and easily other people have solved the same problems, it'll give you a lot of confidence to move forward. So for right now, anyways, I'm available to do one-on-one consultations and training, so you can take advantage of this. The consultation's priced at $250. I price it that way so that it's accessible for anyone who's serious. You know, I don't want it to be too expensive that people can't afford it, but at the same time, if it's free, you're not going to value the information you get and you're not going to take action. So it's important for you to invest in yourself. And for those few of you out there who want me to fly out and do in-person coaching and work with you around the clock for however many days you need, that is available for you as well. So there will be a link in the description of this live call or of the video with that will take you to a place where you can get more information and sign up for this consultation if you want. And that is all I've got for you today.